Please take your seats and silence your phones. Change isn't just happening, it's happening fast. Today, edges are everywhere and anywhere. Whether it's down the street, across the hall, or on the factory floor, more endpoints mean more risks. And cybercriminals are already exploiting them at a scale and speed never seen before. Waiting isn't an option, and complex infrastructure just slows you down. You need a new approach. Security that puts you one step ahead of constant change. Whether it's automation, consolidation, or integration, Fortinet has you covered. Because you need to prepare for the unexpected today. Experience a secure future now. Everyone, please welcome our Chief Revenue Officer and Executive Vice President of Support, Patrice Perche.
Welcome to Accelerate 2023. I have to say that I'm quite impressed with the number of people. I can't see you at the end of the room, but I hope you can see me. I was also very impressed yesterday when I went through the Tech Expo and feeling the energy that you all bring. And clearly, we are building a very strong community about cybersecurity experts. So as a business leader at Fortinet, I want to talk about success and how Fortinet has been able to be successful, during the last few years and how we will continue to be successful moving forward. And I want to thank you, of course, all of you, from our loyal customers, our partners and employees, who have been supporting us and providing the dedication during this very difficult time that we're all facing. So success is about having a vision. It's about executing the vision. It's about leadership. It's about also making change in the market. So let's start with the vision. Innovation is really part of the DNA of Fortinet. When Ken and Michael have started, the vision has to build an integrated cybersecurity platform. And that started with the well-known unified threat management platform called FortiGate, which was already at that time consolidating several functions into one appliance and making the convergence between network and security. At the core of this vision, it's an organic development approach that delivers unparalleled benefit and providing a strong automation and integration. And this groundbreaking approach has evolved back to 2016, already 5 years ago, to launching the Fortinet Security Fabric. Here again, we was leading the innovation ahead from the curve, and we have seen that this platform, which composes about almost 53 products today, is a converged platform that manages threat intelligence and security services to deliver, in fact, the value for a customer, reducing the complexity that they're all facing. The fabric covers an hybrid environment to secure the entire attack surface, including the cloud, including the OT, including all different edges. And also the fabric allows us to address the evolving threat landscape, reducing the time to react and reducing the management complexity. And today, Gartner validates, in fact, the fabric. Sorry, I was not on the slide. They call it the platform, the security mesh. So here again, we have been, in fact, leading the space, and Gartner also predicts that 75% of the large organization will embrace this evolution to reduce the complexity and be able to react fast, on time, to all the massive threats we are all facing. A platform approach, of course, it's very important. Many competitors are starting to talk about platform. They claim to have a platform, but none of them cannot claim the level of integration and automation. And none of them can claim the level of validation of each of the individual feature and security function that we have inside the fabric. Those validations confirm the effectiveness of our solution, making us today the most validated cybersecurity company in this space. The Fortinet Security Fabric allows us to address a fast evolving market, and that's set to grow from 180 billion to 280 billion by 2026. And if you're looking at the current market trend, it is clear that the convergence and the consolidation are becoming increasingly prevalent, highlighting the importance of a unified cybersecurity approach. Ignoring this convergence and the consolidation is simply not an option for all organizations looking to stay ahead of the curve. So we've been talking about this vision and innovation, but to be successful also, you need to execute. And that's what we do at Fortinet. Our consistent execution is reflected, in fact, on our consistent business growth. In 2022, our revenue and billing grew above 30%, which was almost 3 times the market, showing that, of course, the interest of this technology and the value we deliver to you. This performance is also very impressive given our scale, and also it believed by itself about the strengths of the execution and the innovation. We're also proud to serve now today 635,000 customers of all sizes, and we remain very committed to even reach further. The consistent execution is also reflected in our financial stability, which is very, very important today on a difficult market. Since our IPO in 2009, we have been constantly executed the Rule of 40, providing our customer with a financial stability and visibility, even on the challenging market condition. This commitment to stability and financial discipline is particularly important today in today's market, where many small players on this space are struggling and may not be able to execute their plan. The strength of our execution is also reflected in our business diversity. Our innovative approach of the platform to provide the same technology to serve customers of all sizes and all industry. It results in a diversified business revenue model that spans across segments, geographies, and industry, providing the strong business stability and predictability. We are constantly investing in each market segment to ensure that we can adapt our go-to-market and to meet the unique challenge that faced by each of the customers. Successful execution is also built on a very large trusted ecosystem. Cybersecurity is all about trust. And we build a successful go-to-market through channel partners to address altogether the challenge of cybersecurity. We believe that trust and collaboration with our customer, with our partner, even with our employee, is required to succeed against the cyber criminal and the evolving threat landscape. Success is not just about execution and innovation, but it's about demonstrating a constant leadership. And at Fortinet, the priority, of course, is to listen to our customer, listen to our partner, and evolve our product offering to react quickly to the market demand. Fortinet had a track record to enter into new markets, innovate, execute, and lead. Let me show you 3 areas of this constant leadership and how we will also evolve to new areas. From the inception of the company, we created description with the Fortinet Unified Threat Management Appliance, which was rapidly evolving into an enterprise-class network firewall, allowing us to be recognized as a leader by Gartner in 2017. Since then, we have been able to continue to execute and progress in the leader Magic Quadrant. This evolution showed progress both in vision and innovation, as well as in execution. And today, Fortinet is recognized as a true leader in this space with the highest ability to execute. Despite some, let's say, cloud-only cybersecurity player that say that firewall is no longer needed, we believe the opposite is true. Next generation firewall are at the core of any robust cybersecurity infrastructure, and their importance is only increasing. Our flagship FortiGate offers a consistent FortiOS and single pane of glass of management, enabling our customer to use it in a very different form factor and use case. We offer to our customer the freedom of the choice and the flexibility. They can easily move in and out any of these use cases with the same operating system, same management platform, which help to reduce the complexity. All of this is contributing to our performance. And this market, which is about 16 billion, continues to expand. Another proof point of our consistent leadership is about Secure SD-WAN. When we started entering to this market, we were not recognized when the SDN emerged. But thanks to our customer-focused approach, we have built into our FortiOS operating system the requiring network features to automate the branch deployment, with the convergence of networking and security features. Here again, we did not buy, but we created the innovation into our lab and delivered the best value to our customer. 3 years later, we are now leader, and we are leading this space in the secure SD-WAN. And we have been leading this space since then with the same vision and the same ability to execute. As you can see in this chart, this market is about to grow from a 5 billion today to a 10 billion by 2028. This will provide a high contribution to our performance and future success. The third pillar of the leadership relates to the cyber physical security and the need to secure your critical infrastructure. Here again, the same secret sauce, listening to our customer, innovating by leveraging our R&D capacity and anticipate the market. Same consistent organic approach with the adapted technology and feature to match OT security need. After 4 years of innovation and establishing a strong partnership with OT-focusing players, we are leading this space with a great ecosystem. Those markets will also continue to grow and expand, and clearly we set the path for future development thanks to our fabric approach. So those are just 3 examples about how Fortinet is able to learn, lead, and execute. Let's share what will be the next area for the innovation and leading in this space. First is about the unified SASE. When COVID happened, many people have been struggling to secure the remote workforce. Since then, we have seen a demand, of course, as everybody has changed a bit the way to work, working from anywhere. So we have been building again with the same convergence and consolidation approach to secure the remote workforce, consolidating multiple functions to provide the best ROIs and the best integration. Those functions are the secure web gateway, the CASB, the ZTNA, the sandbox, firewall services, and we will leverage our massive install base of customers using our Z1. As an example, in terms of description, we charge all of these functions by one price per user, where all of our competitors are charging by function with a very expensive cost. This new and innovative approach about universal SASE will provide the easiest way to deploy with the lowest latency, leveraging your investment in your data center, in your edge, whatever you want to secure the cloud and the SaaS application. Another area for the evolution will be the endpoint. We all use it today, multiple endpoint agents, to handle the security for the remote user. Classic enterprise protections, EDR, XDR, ZTNA. Like we did for the networking consolidation, Fortinet is coming with a unified next-gen endpoint that will cover all of these use cases, reducing the complexity at the endpoint. Secure 5G. For decades, Fortinet has been securing the service provider space, leveraging our high-performance security portfolio, and we learned a lot about 4G security and 5G security. Today, we do see an evolution about this 5G as a 5G private network. So more corporate may embrace this technology to deploy the network inside their manufacturing plant. And Fortinet, again, using the same platform, will be able to help you on this journey, securing this new area. And 5G will be also integrated in many new areas to deploy our secure SD-WAN. A successful approach with the consistent execution and a great leadership, that's what makes, of course, the success. But as a leader in this space, we also committed to advancing our industry. I think you all see that, but our industry is in constant evolution. today, CIO, CISO, they are tasked with business-critical initiatives such as securing and connecting the work from anywhere, enabling the digital acceleration, managing application moving to the edge or to the cloud, securing OT environment converging with IT. Organizations are also facing the increasing compliance requirement on info security, data privacy, and ethics. Meanwhile, the threat landscape is also continuing to evolve, and the cyber risk is escalating for all of us. Through this unique innovation and threat intelligence, we are committing to address those new requirements and to shaping the evolution of the cybersecurity. This commitment is essential because today, without cybersecurity to protect the digital life, our society is at risk. Our social responsibility mission as a company is to address cybersecurity as a sustainability issue. That's why we are committed to advancing cybersecurity through partnership, community engagement, and innovation. Partnership against cybercrime. You will hear today with the presentation, with the WEF, with Interpol, MIT, how we collaborate between the public and private to go against and try to improve the cybercriminal catching. Addressing the cybersecurity skill gap, we committed to train, and we pledged to train about 1 million by 2026 people, try to help on the skill shortage we are all facing. And last, driving sustainable innovation. As we innovate on our product, we are committed to reduce the environmental impact of our product. Now, let me talk about the commitment we have toward our partner. We have built from the beginning a very successful model, a trusted channel-centric go-to-market. This has been a key element of our success, and it will continue to be the case in the future. Today we see with the large partner ecosystem that many of our competitors are tempted to bypass the channel. We are committed to work with you to secure your customer and our customer all together. We all need the entire workforce to help facing the biggest challenge we are. Please, you will see, and there is a specific channel track about the evolution of our Engage program and how we will help you to train your workforce for the session during those 2 days. And of course, we are very committed to the success of our customer, enabling you and supporting you in the best way along your cybersecurity journey. We have been continuing investing in our support services, and we have grown our capacity by over 30% last year, with about 1,800 people focusing on achieving customer success. We have completely revamped our service catalog to maximize your Fortinet investment. And here again, we are very committed to maintain the highest customer satisfaction. We're all facing a serious economic challenge. And in this difficult time, you need to be able to rely on a vendor who can help you to be responsive to your need, whatever they are and however they evolve. You also need to count on this vendor in the long run. That's why we remain your cybersecurity vendor of choice and committed to deliver the best services. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage our founder and Chief Executive Officer, Ken Xie.
First, thank you for so many people show up here. The last time we gathered here is about 4 years ago. This time we definitely see much more people. Thank you very much for coming to the Fortinet Accelerate 2023. For me, I probably, well, thank you. So this is probably my 20th time to present in the Accelerate. It's still pretty much the same concept, the same idea. So I will try to see whether I can twist a little bit, I can have a new angle, and I can convince you a little bit more about convergence and consolidation. I only have 10 slides. So the first one actually is about convergence. So we have this idea 23 years ago when we started Fortinet. And in the last 23 years, so we keeping invest, we keeping develop, and this is the data come from Gartner recently. They also believe the convergence will happen, and in 2030, the secure networking will be larger than the networking. So we have this thought about 23 years ago, and it's finally happening, so I'm pretty happy about it. The reason we see secure networking will overtaking the traditional networking is we do see the current networking and also internet is designed about 50 years ago in 72 or 73. So we're still using the same protocol. When the internet started designing, they see everything is the same trust level. They trust everything basically. So that's where they connect all the people, all the device, all the application, all the content in the same trust level. So that's not the case today. Because today there's so many different content, so many different applications from different location, different device, and people behind it. So you need to handle all this differently. So that's where the network security or secure networking come in. And you can see the secure networking have to deliver the traffic more based on this high layer application content, which also need much more computing power compared to the traditional routing switching, which we're still using today. So that's how we kind of starting company. Basically secure networking kind of starting like 15, 20 years after the networking start. In the late 80, early 90, that's where the secure networking started. That's where I started a company like a Secure Info System and then NetScreen, then Fortinet is the third company. So you can see all these years, secure networking starting getting more and more important because we can address different trust level to process the traffic differently. And now even today, you can work from home or you call it zero trust access. That's all depend on secure networking to process the traffic more based on the high layer content application or device user level. So that's the reason we see more and more important secure networking and also starting to take over the traditional networking market. This one is a kind of a little bit bigger picture for the whole IT space or infrastructure. You can see what's coming next. It's really the IoT device, Internet of Things device. So the 5G or even 6G will enable so many devices connect on the internet, but they're still using the same protocol, the same networking protocol. They're still not addressing the security side yet, not addressing the content application side yet. It's pretty interesting. I'm also amazed when I studied Stanford 30, 40 years ago. How come this internet protocol can survive so long for the same protocol? Because it's very, very scalable, very, very resilient. So that's making this protocol keeping surviving, even they don't address any different trust level. That's how network security or secure networking come in to helping address the high layer traffic. You can see based on the computing power evolution, based on the display evolution, so the food chain for this slice show is also Gartner slides. I believe some of you see this multiple times because this slides come up about 6, 7 years ago. I believe this is the third time I present this slides. So you can see the food chain here. So when the display comes from terminal to the PC, handle some graphic, to the mobile phone, the next one to the immersive technology is more about wearable, more about all the environment and surface you can display. Then to the computing power, move from the mainframe to the server, then to the cloud, then next one to the edge. So a lot of questions asked about, with the cloud, with the mobile, do we still need a network security? So if you look at in the last 10, 20 years, even a lot of applications move to the cloud, but network security is still growing very, very fast, keeping growing. Like I keep on saying network security keeping growing like 10 to 20% every year in the last 20, 30 years. Will continue to grow this kind of rate in the next 10 to 20 years. It's all because today's networking, today's cloud, the mobile connection, even the new IoT connection, they're still using the same network protocol. They're still not addressing the content layer, the secure networking addressing in the application layer. So that's why when you handle different trust level in different traffic, you do need a secure networking to handle that one. And then that's become more and more important. So these slides combine the slides before. We do see even with the cloud, with the mobile, and next to the edge, secure networking still keeping growing and become more and more important. We'll grow with the cloud, we'll grow with all the edge computing, we're keeping growing without IoT connection. Because most IoT device today has a pretty much difficult time to load any security software on it. So the only way to secure this IoT device was by network security. So that's how important network security will be in the next 10, 20 years. We'll continue keeping growing. This is some kind of result in the last 20 years. This talk about the whole secure networking, or we call network security, including the firewall, UTM, any other like individual intrusion, all these things. You can see last 20 years, we keep gaining market share because the convergence thinking we have, and also the investment we made in the area, and also going forward, I do believe will be keeping growing and become more and more kind of important in the space. So I'm halfway through. So next is about consolidation. So I think two consolidation I want to talk about. One is a vendor consolidation. You can see the two biggest market in cybersecurity is endpoint and also network security. It's pretty interesting. In the cybersecurity space, every year there's a new function needed. There's a new vendor come up. But so far, no one dominant in the space. It's still very, very fragmented space. The reason is really when some company grow bigger, they're much slower on the innovation. They're much slower come up with a new function. And that's why a lot of company like Symantec in the past endpoint side, you can see the Cisco, even Palo Alto on the network security side, they depend on acquisition to keep up the change, to come up with a new function needed in the space. And Fortinet is very unique, very different. So we are pretty much the only company we more depend on internal innovation and internal development to meet the marketing demand, come out of space. So that's the benefit. We have a one platform compared to the multiple platform, whether from Cisco or Palo Alto, which in the network security space, or in the endpoint, there's a lot of acquisition going on there. So that's where in the network security, the things actually kind of different in the endpoint. Some endpoint, you can load multiple endpoint software in your PC or your mobile phone, as long as you have enough computing power. But in the network security, in the like IT infrastructure, it's very difficult to have a multiple box handle network security. Because for network security, in order to stop the bad content application, you have to be inline. So if you have a multiple inline device, you end up with be too costly, very, very big latency, and very unreliable infrastructure, and very difficult to manage. So if you look at enterprise or some other service provider, they mostly only have one network security device and try to integrate as much function as possible. You can see a lot of individual, we call the like a single function player, whether the sandboxing or the like intrusion prevention, or the NAT, or the web firewall, they all kind of disappear after a few years once the platform player integrates this function into their platform. So the single individual, like a function vendor, has very difficult time to survive in the network security space. So that's where we see the very important, if we can keep up the innovation, we can keep up all this new function, integrate together with existing function as a single platform. It's a huge benefit for the customer because the uniqueness of your display all the network security into your infrastructure. So that's how Fortinet want to address this consolidation. In the vendor consolidation, we do believe if we can keep up all this internal R&D innovation, which we can see in the pattern where we have is probably 3x more than any other competitors. And at the same time, not only we want to keep up innovation, we also want to keep up the improvement. So innovation is the first step, but also we want to integrate. We also want to make it improvement over time, make it perfect. So that's where half the engineer working on innovation, and other half more working on how to improve the integration, the function, and the better performance, lower cost, like whether leverage ASIC chip and have a better OS. So that's how we kind of keep improving over the last 23 years, very, very consistent, but also kind of pretty much all the same old idea. Now the function consolidation I also want to talk about. I put this in the 4 different levels from left to right. So the most left side you can see is really the ecosystem. So thank you for our partner, and so we have over 300, we call 40 partner, and over 500 vendor. We integrate all these things together. So that's built a very good ecosystem for the whole cybersecurity space. This is very, very important for us to success because you cannot depend on a single vendor to make your infrastructure more secure. It has to be working together. We realize that one, and we also appreciate all the partners working together with us. Then the second one is we call the 40 Fabric. We keep talking about Fabric for more than 10 years. So right now we have a 53 product, pretty much all starting with a 40 something, like a 40 web, 40 mail, 40 client, and 40 sandboxing, even 40 phone, all these things. So that's the Fabric product, also mostly developed in-house. Make it integrate and automate from day one, which is also very different than other competitors, which most of their other products come from acquisition and also don't have the broad coverage as we have in the Fabric level. Then the third one is the OS level, the platform. One single platform can cover all the network security function needed. So we have over 30 major functions. Even today, announced the new 40 OS. So every year we do announce one major release in the 40 OS. Right now it's a 40 OS 7.4. Last year is 7.2. You can see in the OS level, so we keep adding new function. That's very, very important. Even the company get bigger, we want to make sure we cover the new function, we can continue to grow with the market. If we really slow down, then we probably will be in trouble, more like some other competitor. You have to go acquisition, which will be very difficult to do the integration, especially in the OS level. So that's where it's very, very important, come up the innovation, keep up the new function development. But of these 30 plus main function, the next level is ASIC. We need to use ASIC to accelerate this function. So we have a room to run the new function. At the same time, we can also address the speed need because speed goes faster and faster every year. So that's where probably this is the first time in the last 20 years we started to disclose the detail of a 40 ASIC. You all have a copy brochure on your seat. On the cover page, there's some detailed information about FortiASIC we announced about, I think, a few weeks ago. You can see from each generation, we almost double the application can use ASIC to accelerate. Now the new SB5 can accelerate 14 application there. And when we move application to the ASIC level, they tend to improve in speed about 10x. And at the same time, free up the CPU. We have the same general purpose CPU as any other competitors. Free up the CPU to cover the new function, which is also very, very important. So that's gave us a keeping improving and perfect solution there. At the same time, keeping changing the space, gave the new function. So that's where the ASIC gave us huge advantage, differentiate us from other competitors, because the huge computing power needed in the secure networking, and that's all solved by the ASIC, and also lower the cost, at the same time keeping adding more function there. I think I pretty much run out of time. Cannot say anything without talk about SASE and service, because the service is the most important part in the cybersecurity. It's not the product, it's actually the service. Because security is more difficult to handle. That's why all the service provider is very, very important. We also see the importance of a service provider. We want to partner together from day one. And look back to 10, 20 years ago, service provider is also the biggest sector for Fortinet. So we see the importance of the service and how to address today's service. Because today, there's so many ways you can connect to internet compared to 10, 20 years ago. That time, most enterprise connection all go through a few internet connection. They call it enterprise firewall. Now you can access internet easily from home. You can also access all these different ways in the working environment, even working from home there. So that's how to manage the security service with all this new connection, new access, and at the same time, pretty much working everywhere, anywhere. So that's where we do see the importance of SASE, the service there. But we also want to address this differently, because we do believe in order to do the service, you need to make sure the service very scalable, very reliable, also very broadly applied to the customer environment. It's not just go through the cloud or go through some SASE provider only. You have to address the customer need on-premise, in the cloud, work from home, but also not just mobile phone or mobile laptop, but also between application, between data center, between the service, between all the servers. So that's why we see the SASE need to be integrated together, need to be in the same platform, the same OS. Just like other networking function, like SD-WAN we have, just like all these, even going forward the 5G, and also the Wi-Fi and the 6E, a little bit similarity there. So all need to be integrated together with all the security service the service provider can provide to the customer base. So that's what we see. The service provider will play a very, very important role to the SASE, and we want to build the best product to supporting the service provider. So making their security service more scalable, more broadly, more resilient, and at the same time can be more cost efficient, and they can also benefit from all this service they provide. So that's our vision about universal SASE. I think then John Madison and also Robert May will talk more about all this. So that's where, different from other competitor, we want to have an integrated and also one platform SASE solution compared to all these other different SASE provider. This also talk about one platform advantage compared to some other vendor has a multiple platform for different kind of Magic Quadrant. We have the same OS, same platform, lead multiple Magic Quadrant. So that's also very different than other competitors. So this last slide, using the data to summarize the convergence and consolidation. So on the left side is the 5 new FortiGate product we released in the last few quarters. We summarize all together. So on average, we have probably like a 5 to 10 times better performance on all the top 7 network security functions needed. So I don't see any other competitor, any other vendor release all this we call secure computing rating. So it's basically for the same function, for the same cost, how much performance advantage we have compared to competitor. On the right side, use example about how much energy saving we have. So that's enable us to deploy secure networking in much broader environment, in much more use case than any other competitor. That's also make us believe that the product growth and also network security or secure networking will keep growing 10 to 20% in the next 10 to 20 years. It's not some competitors say only grow low single digit. Because the technology, because the investment we made, because all this data we're showing here, so we do see kind of the benefit of convergence and consolidation, the investment we made, and also the kind of the partner we all here kind of supporting together. So we see it's huge potential going forward. So with that, let me turn to John Madison. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage our Chief Marketing Officer and Executive Vice President of Products, John Madison.
Thank you, Ken. So as Ken says, it was 2019, 4 years ago when we had this event. How many people were here in 2019? Show of hands. Oh, about a third. Now, back then, I made the comment that although there's 15 million people in Florida, there's also over 1 million alligators. Now, during COVID, the alligators have thrived. There's now over 2 million, so let's be extra careful out there. All right. So I'll talk about 3 things: secure networking, one platform, and OT aware. Let's start off maybe with the threat landscape. I think there's over 200,000 now CVEs out there. You saw the 3CX yesterday, the vulnerability. And then social engineering is moving on. Has anyone heard of phishing? Not PH, but with a V, phishing. That's where we use AI, and we'll take someone's voice and phone up and try and get money. Now, I tried this technology recently. I took some samples of Ken Z, and I called up Keith and said, marketing needs extra funding. It didn't work. You need more than AI to get past Keith Jensen. All right, what's going on? Well, as you all know, applications are moving around. And so we've got applications moving to the cloud and moving to the edge. Work from anywhere. I think we've got about 30% of our staff back in the office now in our headquarters in Sunnyvale. And of course, OT. And here's the issue. The issue is that there are a lot of different products people have deployed, and this has caused huge complexity and also risk. And so this next slide, if everyone gets this slide, understands it, we can actually move on to the next presenter. So pay attention really closely. Ken talked a bit about this, and that is, what is secure networking? Secure networking is networking that is location, user, device, content, and application aware. And everyone, of course, looks at next-gen firewall, that looks at content and applications and users and said, that's very obvious. But also SD-WAN. People look at SD-WAN and say, well, that's just replacing networking and routers. Yes, but it's also application aware. It's application steering. That is secure networking. Look at zero trust. It checks the device. It checks the user. There's an application proxy. That is secure networking. And even Wi-Fi these days, that needs to look at OT environments and devices, is device aware. And of course, SASE that looks at things like CASB and the content. These are all secure networking components. Let me stop. Show of hands if you all get that. Oh, there's one person over here who didn't get it. We've got to move on. You had your chance. All right, firewalling. Firewalling, we think, obviously, is fundamental. It's the most important piece. And so firewalling in the past, and even today, actually, is the security component at the perimeter. But as we all know, that perimeter is moving, and the infrastructure is moving. And so now, instead of maybe 1 or 2 use cases, we actually have at least 10. Firewall as a service, native firewall, and probably the biggest change is the distributed firewall. This distributed firewall now sits at the campus, sits at the branch. In fact, Gartner, of course, have a new name for this. It's called the hybrid mesh firewall. And by 2026, over 60% of companies will have these multiple firewalls. I was talking to an enterprise, maybe a month ago, and I asked them how many firewall vendors they had. And they said maybe 2 or 3. By the time we finished going through all these use cases, they had 8. That's totally untenable. Too many. So Fortinet's working very hard to make sure that we can cover all these different firewall use cases through appliances, obviously, through virtual, through native, as a service. And you can see these are all the new introductions, even in the last quarter. New FortiGates for low latency, for the perimeter, our cloud-native firewall in AWS, even container firewalls. The ability to maintain a single policy across all these firewall use cases is going to be essential going forward. And again, as Ken mentioned, our Security Processor 5 was announced a few weeks ago. This will be the basis, will be the engine inside our distributed firewall, also our SD-WAN firewall, as well as our rugged and extended firewalls. Now, I'm not going to go through all the stats on here. Rest assured, it's very fast and can maintain superior performance over anything in the marketplace that is general purpose CPU for the next 5 years. All right, so Ken had a technical graph showing the number of units that we ship over the last 20 years. I'm going to do a marketing version of this. Thank you. Good job he won. That'd have been bad. All right, let's continue our journey. And Secure SD-WAN is the next piece our customers have done. This, of course, you can just switch on. You don't really need to tell us. Just switch it on. It's part of our operating system. And a lot of customers have done that. It's really, really important. It's a foundational component because once you've implemented and deployed SD-WAN, really your users and devices can go anywhere, and so can your applications, because now you've inserted application steering in between the two. Very fundamental technology. And by the way, we'll continue building out SD-WAN. SD-WAN has got a long way to go in terms of new features and functionality. And of course, a lot of our customers then have switched on SD-Branch, and more recently, SD-Campus, where we provide that secure connectivity through our access points, our switches, and then the WAN connectivity through 5G and extender. Now, if you notice, I'm running through this, it's the same manager, FortiManager. It's the same set of securities from FortiGuard sitting on the same platform. And that is going to be essential going forward, that you have the same consistent policy across all these things. Now, the one area which I think people have maybe gone in a different direction is SASE, and that is as a service. And I think a lot of customers have implemented a cloud version of this for remote users. And that's okay. But our belief long term is that you need to follow the most efficient path for security. Now, it may be you're off the network in a remote location and you want to go to the internet. Makes sense maybe to stay off the network, on the SASE network. Well, if you're in the premise and you need to go to a private application, probably makes more sense to stay on the network. What if you're off the network and you want to go to a private application? Maybe you should transfer from the SASE to the SD-WAN, which means, by the way, that your SASE needs to be able to implement SD-WAN. And again, what if you're on the network and you want to go off the network to a public application? So our belief long-term is that you need to take the most efficient path. And that means your SASE and your SD-WAN need to be totally integrated under a single policy and single security. This is going to be very important going forward. And then maybe the end goal is definitely zero trust. And I can tell you from our own experience, we've been implementing zero trust inside Fortinet, and it's a journey, for sure. We're about 18 months into it. We probably got through 80% of the applications. It's definitely a journey. It's not something you just switch on tomorrow and away you go. Zero trust is very important, again, to be totally integrated, both inside your client, and Patrice mentioned the unified client, as well as the ability to apply that application gateway anywhere, because that needs to be next to the applications, and that's why we built the application gateway reverse proxy straight into the firewall. So it can be in your data center, it can be in your cloud, it can be on-premise. But again, it's one single manager and one single console across everything. And it all comes together in our integrated secure networking stack, consisting of FortiOS that can be deployed on appliances, on virtual machine, as a service, a unified client, FortiClient, all the different functions, one security layer, and one management console, FortiManager. All right, enough of me for a while. Let's invite a customer on stage. Please welcome Brian Talbot. Welcome, Brian. I assume you flew here.
Yes, I did.
Oh, good. All right. Can you give me a little overview of Alaska Airlines? That'd be great.
Sure, thank you. So hopefully everyone here is already familiar with Alaska Airlines. If not, we're the 5th largest airline in the country. We're a Fortune 500, $10 billion organization serving 120 some odd destinations. And most of all, and what we're mostly proud of, is that we're an airline that cares. We deliver fantastic customer service for our guests every day.
It's an excellent airline. I try and fly Alaska anytime I can, unless I'm going to the UK. I can't.
We're not going there yet.
Okay, soon.
Maybe one day.
Soon. All right. Now, Brian, I know before you became the CISO, you were also head of networking.
That's right.
So maybe you can talk a bit about security and networking.
Yeah, thank you. So my background is in networking, and in a lot of ways my career has paralleled some of what you and Ken have talked about already, which is this convergence of technologies. 10, 15 years ago, I really wasn't probably thinking about being a CISO, and I really wasn't thinking so much about integrated network and security. But with the advent of things like UTM from Fortinet, these things really started coming together, both technology space as well as for me personally. So when we look at things like you've already talked about, zero trust networking, CASB, SASE, we're seeing this strong convergence. So it really leaves, I think, all of the engineers, maybe many of you in this room, well poised to become fantastic security professionals as well.
Great. And now, of course, you're the CISO. How's life being the CISO?
So it's been a journey. It's been fun. It's been interesting. And one of the things that we're seeing, that I'm seeing immediately, and you've already talked about a little bit, is consolidation. When I came into this role, I was looking at a landscape of 20 or 30 different products that we're implementing to try to cover all of the bases that we need to cover at Alaska. And something that's become very clear is that that's not scalable, it's not tenable, it's too fractured. We've got to have a more consolidated approach. We want to invest in a strategy that takes us in a strong partnership with a single vendor like Fortinet that really covers all of the bases in a more integrated fashion.
Excellent. And of course, everybody in IT these days and security wants to enable the business. Do you think you're achieving that?
I think so. And one of the ways it's come together for us, and this is a little bit of a plug for a session I'll be doing this afternoon talking about this specifically, but we've really pulled together a lot of technologies, and what you'll see here on the screen is essentially a network in a box, but it's a lot more than that. It's security in a box, and it really enables our business to continue to fly in irregular operations. And so we'll deploy this solution in events like post-hurricane so that we can keep our guests flying, get them back to their homes safely and securely while all connected to our network to onboard our passengers.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Okay.
Just so you'd be certain, we didn't pay Brian any money at all. He came on his own free will to talk about cybersecurity. All right, let's click on then, and where are we going next? Oh, the platform. Okay, so we already talked about the fabric and the platform, the networking piece, integrating with users, as well as applications. We talked about how the security is totally integrated inside there. So what about some of these security functions, the SOC, the endpoint, some of the advanced security capabilities? Well, we're still working on that and adding those capabilities. In fact, recently we added NDR, network detection and response, to our portfolio. Also an external attack surface monitoring, 4D Recon, to the portfolio. So we continue to build that portfolio out. And you can see actually from here, our endpoint is visionary, our email security is leading, our SIM is a challenger to leadership, and also our SOAR is actually very well respected in integrating those things together. But what's most important with this portfolio is how we bring it together, how we make it all work together, because the key goal of the fabric is to build that automation, to make these things work and talk to each other, to exchange the policy, to exchange security and threat intelligence. Now, a really good example of this is our outbreak service. Our outbreak service is something we send out to customers when there is an outbreak. And what we do is we explain what the outbreak is, why it's there, who it's affecting, why it's affecting. But then we also point out across there all the different capabilities across our entire portfolio. So we'll start immediately by saying, where are all the protection capabilities? In the firewall, in the WAF, in SASE, Mail, CASB. These are all the capabilities we automatically update for you to make sure you can protect. And we continue that, making sure that we can maybe use behavioral systems to do that detection. And then looking at other things like IPS, as well as network detection and response systems to track down that threat. Detection capabilities, EDR, analyzer, SIM. Can we respond automatically? Have we built that automatic connectivity in there to stop the threat? XDR into the network from the endpoint, for example. Can we provide services, response services to help you? And then, of course, identification. Going forward in the future, what tools can we put in place to analyze and see if we can stop it even getting into your network with attack surface monitoring or the security rating across your entire fabric? So this is a very quick and simple example to show how powerful the fabric is once you've got it in place across your cybersecurity portfolio. All right. This next slide I might get in trouble for. So if anyone asks you about it, you hadn't seen it before, you don't know where you saw it, you don't know where it came from, because I'll track you down if you tell on me. I'll make you come to Accelerate next year. If you look at consolidation, you need a certain amount of products and elements to consolidate, okay? So I did this example. I thought, let's do some analysis. Let's see how many cybersecurity vendors in terms of magic quadrants. There are about 10 magic quadrants, 10 or 11 magic quadrants which are specific to cybersecurity. And I thought, let's see how many vendors have got around 7. That's a fair amount of consolidation you can do. There's what I call the pretenders. They're not quite there yet. They could get there, but we'll see, about 4. There's quite a few vendors who had maybe 2 magic quadrants. quite a few, in fact, hundreds who had one Magic Quadrant, and good luck if they got no Magic Quadrants. All right, so the first analysis was this. No surprise here, Fortinet has 7 Magic Quadrants. And in fact, in the ones we're not inside there, we have products also. I think Microsoft there is 7. Then there's a bunch of pretenders who have maybe 3, 4 Magic Quadrants. But then there's a huge amount of vendors. I mean, even though I've got a wide screen here, I would need a much wider screen to get all the vendors on here. And again, I think there's over 1,000 now cybersecurity vendors out there. So this consolidation will happen at some point. It's just a matter of time. Again, we think we're in a great position to be a consolidator in this industry. All right, let's take another quick break. I'd like to invite Joe Newman to the stage. Hi, Joe.
How you doing, John?
Joe, can you tell us a bit about Digital Realty?
Yeah, so Digital Realty is one of the largest data center providers in the world. As you see, we have over 300 data centers located internationally. So we've serviced that on what we call Platform Digital. So the way we see it is that is the best place for hybrid environments to exist, where cloud service providers and your data can meet up in the same location. So going off of the SASE providers, the hybrid cloud models that Fortinet is doing, this is the same type of thing that very, works in tandem for how we can enable your business. So, this is where we need to have as much data as possible, as we see pure hybrid or pure cloud strategies are very failing, and we have to start pushing into hybrid more often.
Thanks, Joe. One thing I've noticed over maybe the last 18 months is that operational technology, we always think about it being in factories and energy and utilities. In our view, it's everywhere. Our headquarters in Sunnyvale is emission-free. It has all sorts of OT technology on windows and blinds and fans inside there. So our belief in the long term is that OT technology will need to be protected in lots of different environments. Let's talk about data centers.
Yeah, so just like Ken was speaking, OT is a very old technology that's been around for decades and such, and that is leading to a lot of issues. So for Digital Realty, OT is one of the problems that we specifically tackle for our customers in providing that secure space in our data centers. So things from cameras, badging, RFID, wireless, the metering that every customer requires from us to provide you accurate power, temperature control, power generation, especially in those tight markets in Europe with power generation, power distribution. The 5 nines that we have to keep uptakes for all our facilities, the high availability. That power distribution is critical, and the critical loads if anybody's ever done it before. Then rolling back around with the power and cooling. So cooling is a huge issue nowadays because of rising temperatures, and additionally just the amount of energy it takes to cool all these facilities and the high compute that we have running right now. So right now in the OT space, one of the biggest issues that we have is these technologies aren't changing anytime soon. It's a very long-term play to get all the vendors in the marketplace to increase their security, change protocols, move to things in more secure environments. So at Digital Realty, we kind of look at 4 different areas where we look at to really build the defensive layer around our data centers so that we can actually operate those technologies in a very secure manner. So as you see here, we're about building robust architectures. It's not single layer anymore. It can't do just the one firewall. You have to have a layered defense after layered defense. Once that is done, we start looking at data segmentation, micro-segmentation, micro-architectures and such. So, as you see, we just keep layering on more and more things. Then additionally, the monitoring and alerting. This isn't IT monitoring and alerting. This is specifically OT related. So as you see the big market growth that is pushing towards OT, you need to look at partnering and vendoring with somebody that understands how OT space works. It's completely different than IT, and it's what the world works on. So when we see the recent breaches in OT over the past few years with the pipelines and such, we're starting to see how that's a very emerging threat, because this is actually what makes our world work. At the end of the day, you have full layered compensation of controls. So it's not 1 or 2 things. You can't just rely on, it's only a firewall at the border. This has to be pervasive throughout all layers of our architecture to ensure that we're actually providing as much compensation until we can get the marketplace and the vendors all increasing their security footprints and their statuses and such. So this is going to be a big community effort to eventually get the marketplace where we need it to in the future.
Well, thank you, Joe. I know we're working with you on that OT security and also working with you with some of our SASE pops around the world. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
And of course, Fortinet has a pretty strong OT security portfolio consisting of secure networking. We just recently announced a new rugged 70F firewall, secure access, privileged access management. Guess what we call that? The FortiPAM. And of course, our OT-aware cybersecurity, where we're implementing OT-aware technology inside SIM and SOAR and EDR. We're increasing our threat research for FortiGuard updates to OT, to FortiGuard itself, and of course, our OT ecosystem. OT environments are very diverse, very fractured and fragmented, and so you definitely need an ecosystem to play in that marketplace. All right, and training. I think there was over 800 people on pre-training before Accelerator, sold out completely. We may have to increase that capacity. The NSE certification itself is upgrading to more specialization as we go forward. You may have seen that. We're committed to IT awareness and education. Customers always ask me, what technology should you implement first? Train the people first. So IT awareness, we're committed to training 8 million staff in the US. We're rolling that out to other countries as we go forward. We continue to move forward our academic partner program. When we first started doing that 4 years ago, there was very, very few dedicated cybersecurity degrees. Now there's quite a few of them out there. And of course, making sure diversity and equity in cybersecurity with our training. Okay, today we announced FortiOS 7.4, and I'm not going to go through all the features one by one in 7.4 for sure, but really focused on secure networking and information security. Quite interestingly, though, these days, when we do a FortiOS announcement, not only is it for our appliances, but it's for our VMs, it's for our as-a-service, our SASE, as well as our cloud native. So when we release that FortiOS going forward, it's across all these different form factors. Again, you can see some of the features here on the secure networking side, as well as the CISO and information security side as well. Quite a lot of different features that integrate really well across the fabric. All right, a big thank you to our Accelerate sponsors, 2020 sponsors, Platinum, Gold, Silver. Our Platinum sponsors are speaking, I think, Wednesday morning. I think that's correct. Someone's going to nod ahead somewhere. No, no one's nodding ahead. All right, Wednesday morning it is. A big thank you to our sponsors of Accelerate 2023, and a huge thank you to our customers. This year, we decided to invite some customers, we called it Voice of the Customer, to speak about their experiences of implementing our technology. I personally prefer to listen to customers talking about the technology than our marketing people, for sure. I think you get much more insight. Now, not the marketing people are bad, but you get great insight with the customers. So a big thank you to our customers. Over 50 customers are here. Please look at their sessions, the Voice of the Customer. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop. Next up is Robert May, who's going to take you on a virtual tour of the Tech Expo. You may have seen over the last few years a bit of investment in the golf and the PGA with our own event in Napa and some tournaments around the world. And here's a video to show some of that. Thank you.
Fortinet is changing the game of golf. Our strategic partnership spans 5 continents and leverages the power of our industry-leading cybersecurity technology, enhancing how fans experience the game of golf. With sponsorship at every level, our commitment to the game powers today's professionals and empowers the next generation. Leveraging our brand ambassadors, event activation, and overall investment in driving the game forward. Fortinet ensures safe, secure access and protects your most valuable assets, both on the fairway and in the boardroom. with events designed to connect industry leaders to the top technologies with advanced threat intelligence and secure networking platforms. Whether you need critical infrastructure, application, network, cloud, or OT security, we have the technology engineered to protect your business. It's why the world's largest enterprises, service providers, and government organizations recognize Fortinet as the driving force in cybersecurity. So there's never a question about who's calling the shots, who's keeping score, who's viewing your personal information, or who's watching with you. Champions of performance, reliability, and success. Fortinet, cybersecurity, everywhere you need it.
Please welcome to the stage Senior Vice President of Product Management, Robert May.
Good morning, everybody. So yeah, thanks a lot. And as I guess the last several years, I have the pleasure today to talk to you guys about some of the new things that have been released recently and also some of the things that are coming soon. And of course, at this time of year, it's all about FortiOS, the new version, and what's coming. And so, of course, you know, as with all major releases, there's 200 plus new features, so I won't be able to go into everything, but I do want to talk about some of the top items, really talking about some of those key areas John and Ken were talking about as well. Now, it might be worthwhile just spend 30 seconds here to go through a little bit of how the Tech Expo is organized. Just to give you a little bit of an idea how to navigate it and where to find different things. Now, as with you know, the fabric, we kind of divided up the Tech Expo into those 5 key areas. So network security, cloud security, endpoint security, NOC, and SOC. And within each area, we tried to organize the contents in a way that provides, you know, everything starting from the very automated, out-of-the-box services all the way to the more advanced technologies. And so you're going to find pretty much a journey within each of those sections of how the things are linked together. For the remainder of today, I want to take you on a little bit of a tour of the expo and talk about where to find 7.4 capabilities. And I think for the last almost 10 years now doing this presentation, I always start with the security fabric because one of the big common themes across all of the things you see on this screen is the operations. And the fabric journey really started in a way to automate and simplify the operations. And this included when we started to see companies adopting more segmentation and also starting to shift to cloud. And it became a situation where you really needed to provide a single point of visibility and a single point of control across the network. And every release, we find new ways and new things to layer on top of that fabric connection. And 7.4 is no different in that respect. We'll talk about SD-WAN, of course, and nowadays SD-WAN is really like an essential service, I would call it. Businesses of all size, of all complexity, of even with the most basic operations, they all need SD-WAN because their businesses rely on the data and the applications to be available to their users, their employees, and their customers. So we'll talk about what's happening there. We'll also talk about SASE, of course. In some level, you could almost call SASE the shiny new object in the room, almost. And it's something where, I've met with several customers in the last 6 to 12 months that all have almost a similar predicament in the sense that they've started to make an investment in SASE, but it tended to stall on the operations. And really that's one area where FortiSASE solution has a really big advantage here, and so we'll go into some of that as well. Zero Trust is another topic that comes up time and time again. Pretty much every customer I've talked to in the last 6 months, it's either on the agenda up front or it's something that comes up in the conversation. So it's definitely something that's top of mind. People want to know what it is and how does it differ from, say, other solutions, and especially how to integrate it. How can my operations team pick it up and actually start to use it? Then we'll kind of change focus a little bit. I want to talk a little bit on some of the procurement and consumption challenges. So this is obviously for some of our partners and our MSSP partners who have expressed some needs there. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with OT. And OT is really something that it touches pretty much every product. It's not exclusive to 7.4, but there is some kind of big important services and extensions coming in 7.4 as well. So going ahead here, let's get into it and really, starting with the security fabric and what have we looked to expand on there. Like I said, every release we add something new, and even as recently as 6 months ago, we introduced what's called the SD-WAN Self-Orchestrator. And if you're not familiar with that feature, what that is it uses that fabric telemetry connection to basically allow a new location to plug into the SD-WAN network directly. So all you do is you bring it online, you establish that fabric connection, and immediately it can synchronize all of the complex configuration and essentially self-configure itself. So it's, again, one of these operationally advanced features that helps to offload the operations and make it very, very simple to adopt something new. Now, in 7.4, we've continued down that journey on the fabric and brought in many additional extensions in terms of the attack surface monitoring and the attack surface management. And this, again, utilizes that fabric connection to synchronize all that information together. And it's really an expansion of, if you're familiar with the security rating feature, it's an expansion of that service. So it includes the different databases for IoT and IT and OT detection combined as a single component. And we'll leave OT on the side for a minute because I'll talk about it at the end. But if we look at it from, say, the IoT and the IT device perspective, the first thing with people starting to come back to the office is now there's suddenly a ton of new devices all connecting in, and one really need to be able to detect those devices and continually assess what they are. If someone upgrades it, I need to know what's that new software that's running on it, and it's not just the actual detection and categorization, but also the correlation with FortiGuard. So what vulnerabilities are present or potentially impacting all of those devices connecting to the network. And this is a service or a set of services that continuously run on the product as well. Another component is virtual patching. So this allows basically you to apply a set of protections unique for every type of device. And you don't necessarily, with IoT, want to apply the entire database against every single device, but it does it on a per device, per session basis. And it's very, very dynamic and automatic. So it's something you don't have to think about, but it applies the IPS-like protection on the individual IoT or IT devices. Now, another thing that happens as well as part of this overall ecosystem is as you're detecting devices or vulnerabilities, you can do some automatic segmentation. And if you're using the managed switch or managed wireless components, it gives you actually more and more capabilities of how to handle that. If you want to switch the VLANs or switch the SSIDs, and segment these devices around, you have many more capabilities there. And just wanted to highlight that some of the extensions on the wireless and switching that we've done in 7.4 has been to build in more of these best practices. And this is some of the efforts we started back in 7.2 with SD-WAN, was to look across our global install base and start to pull back a lot of these best practice configurations, because most customers, they don't want to run something unique. They want to run the best practice that others are running globally in the same industry, and et cetera. And really, there's a handful of them, and we've built them in as blueprints. And we continue doing this for the wireless and the switching in 7.4. So out of the box, you can essentially get that up and running instantly. Now, moving on to SD-WAN itself here, SD-WAN, every release we have many, many features that come out, and so it's not possible to kind of go through all of the incremental areas, but they're really categorized into 3 groups. So one is around application performance, another is around operations, and again, going back to this theme of operations and how do we make it simpler to adopt, not just SD-WAN, but every part of the fabric. And then finally, the third category is around connectivity. Now, for the application performance, obviously, one of the areas there is how do we gain more throughput and capacity out of each part of the network? And one of those elements, of course, is around the SP5. Ken and John both talked about the SP5 and the SD-WAN capabilities in there. And some maybe simpler, more clear things from the past have been around IPsec and the encryption, decryption. This continues being done in the SP5 specific to the way that SD-WAN is deployed. But it's not just that, it's also things like monitoring. So traditionally, some of the monitoring is done by the platform itself. In the SP5, we can pull more of that down into the hardware level so that this monitoring just shows up as statistics on the interface. So it offloads the entire platform from having to do some of the monitoring of the overlay and underlay networks and provides that automatically. So that's one way that we offload, obviously, the platform by moving stuff down, but we also move stuff up into the cloud, for example. So some of the additional monitoring that we introduced in 7.2 was around bandwidth monitoring. And this service we continue to expand in 7.4 to add more types of monitoring and also to add more extensions across the management platform. So from a single click on the FortiManager, you can pull back a complete report of the real-time bandwidth of all links attached to all locations. And of course, this can be logged to FortiAnalyzer and basically give you a trending over time of how that's going on and what's happening in the network. So, a lot of usability and operational advantages there to be able to see everything in a single location. I mentioned best practices earlier, so when we talk about operations and ease of adoption, one of those things that we really have invested a lot of time is building those best practices directly into the product. And at the end of the day, the customer, at different locations doesn't always have the skilled resources to know how to configure a lot of the complex functions. So, things like having a blueprint that you can start from and continue to build out as you expand the network, and also having ability of, say, the single self-orchestration capability, being able to just, connect the fabric and suddenly everything is learned dynamically. So we really look to, continue pushing SD-WAN as an essential service for all customers and make it very, very easy to adopt as well, because we know not all customers have the same capacity there. As we move into some of the connectivity aspects, of course, you're familiar with all the FortiGate lineup and the virtual appliances and even the public cloud integrations for vWAN and other areas. But of course, another element of that SD-WAN network is around FortiSASE, and it really is that cloud-native extension of your SD-WAN network. Now, probably the biggest advantage you could see from FortiSASE itself is that it is FortiOS behind the scenes. So that means 2 really major things. One is that it has SD-WAN built in, so it has all the resiliency and reliability of an SD-WAN node in your network. All of the same technology on both sides that's designed, tested, and working together on a continual basis. So it makes that overall mesh architecture very, very resilient, okay? The second and possibly the biggest thing is around the simplicity. Because it is a FortiOS behind the scenes, that means your operations team doesn't have to change anything. They've already defining policies, policy packages, and other configuration, and those can be installed directly onto the same part of the network that SASE integrates to. So it's basically a very minimal change in terms of how you operate and continue adding and modifying users and application traffic and other things. So it provides a lot of benefits for the operations itself. Now, a couple of other areas in terms of FortiSASE as well is around the scalability and how we can connect not just users or secure web gateway, but other locations into the SASE network. And you're probably familiar with the FortiExtender. It was been added for a few quarters now, so you can connect those thin branch locations directly into the SASE network. We'll also release additional platforms for FortiExtender, especially targeted at 5G. So any of those remote locations that you may want to connect over 5G, those can now be plugged directly into the SASE network as well. But we haven't stopped there, of course. We continue to take that same capability from FortiExtender, and we embed that into the APs and the switches as well. So now what that means is that any of those cloud-managed wireless or cloud-managed switch networks can be plugged directly into the SASE network as well. And of course, what about FortiGate, right? And FortiGate as well, we've now taken that same technology that we have developed with the extender and embed that into FortiGate as an additional VDOM or virtual domain, and that can now connect up into the SASE network as well going forward. So really, now with FortiGate, of course, you have lots of flexibility, different options where you may want to do processing, but it really gives a lot of opportunity, in future to say, okay, I want to adopt a new security service on top of my existing platform that I maybe would have a different refresh cycle or something like this. So it provides a lot of options now to how that can evolve as we go forward. Last point here is really around the different, say, points of presence locations. And this is really, I would say, a three-pronged approach. So the first area is, of course, expanding our data center footprint. This includes, the last year you've probably seen we've aggressively released many, many locations in terms of our FortiSASE POPs. And, we'll continue down that journey this year and next year as well, for sure. The second area is around public cloud and how we can not necessarily always run an entire FortiSASE POP on the public cloud, which is definitely an option, but also potentially shifting where some of the processing happens, because it may be more beneficial to do certain processing closer to the user, closer to the actual physical branch locations, etc. So it just opens up and unlocks a lot of different flexibility there. And then the third prong is really working with our telco partners. And sometimes that's to have private SASE offerings exclusive for their customers. Other times it can become a shared model where we just expand our FortiSASE into obviously their networks to allow their customers closer access and other benefits as well. So a lot of different activities happening there, and this is of course global in nature. Moving on to Zero Trust here, I think one of the challenge with Zero Trust is it's quite an overused, almost abused term. And so, once get into the conversation with the customers, it becomes a lot of, questions how it works. And so this is really one of the important things is to really understand. And if you're not clear, definitely talk to the people in the Tech Expo. They, can give detailed demos on how it works, because once the customer understands, I think then it clicks and they know, okay, this makes sense, and this is, now I have a plan for how I can integrate that. The other benefit here, just like SASE, this is a feature of FortiOS in terms of the enforcement point. So this means that from an operations standpoint, you already have the capability to manage this. Your operations team is already managing policies. Well, guess what? This is a new set of options on the policies. So they can do this in an incremental way, step by step, and plan how they want to enable it. Really, the thing is with ZTNA, it really up-levels your layer 3 firewall and turns it into an application segmentation firewall. This is really fundamentally how it works, but it can be done selectively. It doesn't need to be done all in one shot, okay? The other benefit of the fact that it's a feature of FortiOS means it's available in the hardware appliances, in the virtual appliances, at the data center, in the public cloud, and in SASE. So all those places have that ZTNA enforcement point. And you can then, from a user perspective, as they move around on-premise, at home, or wherever, they basically get the identical user experience, and they only basically see the applications that they have access to. John mentioned earlier that we've obviously used ZTNA ourselves. We've migrated most of our applications now, but of course we didn't do this all in one shot, right? We started with a test group of users and one application, and we slowly, selectively started expanding that as IT gets comfortable, they understand how it works, they know how to troubleshoot anything, etc. So it really provides a step-by-step approach of how that can be rolled out. Now, just switching focus a little bit here, wanted to touch on a couple of things, and this is covered in a dedicated breakout session as well as a dedicated booth in the Tech Expo. And it's really around some of the procurement and consumption challenges that we see. Now, in terms of procurement, really this is the purchase order challenge, right? For each thing I need to procure, it's a PO, and I get it approved and send it in, and et cetera, et cetera. This can cause delays and frustration. And so this is one of the challenges on the procurement. Now, the consumption challenge is a little bit different. It's related in a way, but the thing is it's more about when's the start and end date of the different contracts. So really wanted to tackle both of these problems in this year. And what we've kind of evolved here is something that's built on top of the Flex VM program. So the Flex VM program is something that allows you, from a virtual machine standpoint, to spin up or decommission virtual machines, to add services, scale in, scale out the sizing, and it's recalculated on a daily basis. So it just provides a very flexible and transparent way on the virtual machine level. Now, this is also something that you can do through the portal, but it's also something you can do through API. So it can be hooked into your CI/CD pipeline. It can be hooked into your marketplace and other things. And on the virtual machine side, this has been here now for a couple of years and keeps evolving. And what we've starting to add now is, number one is around the endpoints. So SASE, ZTNA, and when we go back to looking at the adoption of these technologies, it's something where you can allow IT to start with a test group and then expand and keep expanding as you roll it out. So it makes it very, very much aligned with the way that you can adopt these new technologies on the endpoint side. Another element is around some of the hardware-based FortiGuard services. So allowing those same services to be activated and updated in terms of what services you want on each device, and recalculated on a daily basis. So it takes the same concept we done with VM and allow that to be done for the services that you attach to the hardware appliances as well. So a lot of flexibility there. The last element as well is around how you can also use the same points-based system to procure services for advanced services like professional services, incident response, or consulting services. So just other portfolio or services in the portfolio that you can then procure in that flexible manner as well. Last area I just wanted to highlight here is, of course, around OT. Now, OT you're going to find in many different booths in the Tech Expo. There is one dedicated booth there, but it's also touched on in many of the other product areas as well. And one of the things that we really spent a lot of time in 7.4 is around introducing more holistic visibility for OT environments in the different platforms. This includes FortiAnalyzer and FortiGate. So as you're looking at your topology at your network, it's aligned with things like the Purdue model and the other compliance areas. We've also, going back to the beginning when we were talking about the security services for the attack surface, the same set of capabilities are defined for OT as well. So OT device detection, vulnerability correlation aligned with those OT devices, and virtual patching for those same OT set of devices as well. So really expanding the overall coverage within 7.4 for OT. Now, Of course, in OT, the same set of technologies apply within the SOC. So, whether we're talking about SIM or SOAR or EDR, it's the same set of incident response tools that you need to use, but of course, you want to align the results and those escalations against things like MITRE ICS. So this provides, now new ways to basically handle those same type of incidents, but aligned with the OT operations and the OT compliance needs. And lastly, John mentioned earlier about FortiPAM. This is traditionally, initial version was designed around, okay, the enterprise IT use cases for privileged access, which usually goes to those root accounts and root administration. In the OT world, obviously, this same technology applies to secure remote access. And so, again, taking that same product, same technology, and adapt it around the way that OT needs to use it. So with that, I think the last point I just wanted to touch on here is around the security operations. So within the Tech Expo, you're going to find that a lot of the booths are powered by the actual SOC that we've set up inside the Tech Expo. And actually, in the last 24 hours, they've actually found several of your devices that are infected. So actually, some of your devices may be included in these booth demos, actually. And where you're going to find the SOC is actually located at the back of the Tech Expo, in where the UFC or the Fabric Challenge was being run yesterday. So yeah, that's basically where you'll find it, and they have some SOC displays and stuff in there as well. Now, speaking of the Fabric Challenge, I guess let me welcome David's team up here on stage in a second. But if you are not familiar with what the Fabric Challenge is, we're going to give a video, explain it, and explain a little bit how it was working yesterday. Essentially, what it is it's a competition that we run at all of the expert events globally throughout the year. And then the top winners from each of those expert events are invited to Accelerate to compete head-to-head. And essentially, that's what you were seeing yesterday in the Tech Expo. So I guess, 2 action items here. Number one, when your engineers come to you later this year and say, hey, I want to join this expert event, please approve it. And second of all, encourage them to do well in the Fabric Challenge so you can see them up here on stage representing your company next year as the winners. Okay? So thank you very much.
Yesterday, 40 contestants from around the world faced some extra challenging obstacles in the Ultimate Fabric Challenge Global Championship. For those who aren't familiar with it, the Ultimate Fabric Challengers are engineers who test their skills by configuring multiple Fortinet products that form the security fabric of a virtual enterprise. They get points for each achievement, with the ones who get there first getting the most points. The products they need to be familiar with span the entire Fortinet product line, including FortiGate next-generation firewalls, FortiAnalyzer, FortiManager, FortiSwitch, FortiSASE, and more. This year, they had to contend with a new virtual setting, a state-of-the-art, fully automated manufacturing plant. They also had to know how to configure some of the very latest features available in Fortinet products, like providing secure private access with FortiSASE to remote users. And for the first time this year, the security environment had a strong focus on securing access to operational technology of the factory. The challenge takes knowledge and skill, and sometimes even a bit of luck. But more than that, it takes focus and concentration over the course of 3 solid hours. The Fabric Challenge is an engaging and dynamic experience thanks to the teams of our Senior Director of Product Management, David Chan, and our SVP of Product Engineering, Jordan Thompson, who have made it into, who have made it into a fun way to determine who can best, or at least most quickly, deploy our products. So now let's get ready to meet the winners of the Ultimate Fabric Challenge Global Championship. In an amazing come-from-behind story, our third-place winner started off in the middle of the pack, and over the course of 3 grueling hours, overtook competitor after competitor, gradually rising in the ranks, and finally ending up with the bronze medal and $2,500. From Viva Solutions of Panama City, Panama, please congratulate Manuel Carrasco. The second place winner stayed strong all the way through the competition, never falling out of the top 5 and staying in the top 2 almost the whole way. Even up to the last few minutes, it looked like there was a chance for first place, but she ended up taking the silver medal and its prize of $5,000. Representing Liquid Networks in San Antonio, Texas, please congratulate Sarah Ryba. Like Sarah, our gold medal winner stayed in the top 2 or 3 for nearly the entire contest, maintaining their concentration and focus over the entire 3 hours. It was a hard-fought match. They switched from top to second to top to second throughout the entire time. But ultimately, the gold medal and the grand prize of $10,000 was won by the representative of Packet Systems from Jakarta, Indonesia, Andrian Viryadi Tanamir. No matter how they did in the contest, everyone in the challenge worked very hard to get through it, and very hard just to get into it. So please, give a hand to all of the contestants of the Ultimate Fabric Challenge Global Championship.
Please welcome Derek Mankey, our Global Vice President of Threat Intelligence at FortiGuard Labs, and our distinguished panel for a conversation on how we can harmonize the disruption of cybercrime at scale with Craig Jones of Interpol, Sean Doyle of the World Economic Forum, and John Baker of MITRE Ingenuity.
All right, this has been a fantastic show, and I'm ecstatic to be here. For all those who are familiar with me, you're probably used to me talking about the threat landscape and cybercrime and the problems that are out there. And we know there's a lot of problems, right? You heard John earlier talking about the growing attack surface that compounds every year. MITRE is tracking over 200,000 CVEs now in total on that attack surface, driven by IoT and now operational technology. Meanwhile, we have cybercrime services, crime as a service, ransom as a service that's driving a lot of the profits, right? Because cybercriminals continue to profit at an exponential pace. We have a convergence effect also happening. Yes, we talked about convergence with the security fabric and convergence of platform in the industry, but there's always a mirror image on cybercrime as well too. And we're seeing nation-state APT actors share infrastructure with cybercrime. And we're also seeing wipers now, system wipers taking place too. So the risk continues to elevate. And we don't want to be one step forward, two steps behind, right? So today in my panel, we have a wonderful panel here together. I get to work with them on a frequent basis. And we're going to be tackling this problem, talking about how do we harmonize the disruption of cybercrime. Everybody has a place to disrupt cybercrime. In fact, it's an ecosystem of its own. So we're going to talk about building a chain of disruption and trying to tackle this problem together. But first, I would like to welcome my esteemed guests and give them an opportunity to introduce their organizations and their background. I think we'll start with you, John Baker.
Well, Derek, thank you. Thanks for having me here. This is an awesome opportunity. I'm John Baker. I'm the director of the Center for Threat Informed Defense. We're a sort of a unique nonprofit organization that works with industry to advance threat-informed defense globally. And we do that by bringing together sophisticated security teams from around the world to focus on the most critical, most pressing problems and solve them through collaborative R&D. We're very focused on action. When we see a problem, we want to get to work and start developing a solution on it. We want to create practical solutions that the whole world can take and leverage and use. Ultimately, I'd sum it up to say, our goal is to make cyber defense significantly more efficient and effective for the whole community.
Thank you very much. So, Sean Doyle from the World Economic Forum in Geneva, Switzerland. I'm lead for cybersecurity with a focus on our research into how organizations manage their cyber risk, so focusing on what we can do to get business leaders and organizational leaders to handle this topic better, and supporting collaboration between public sector agencies like law enforcement and the private sector to really enhance how we tackle and disrupt cybercrime.
Thanks very much. Craig Jones, I'm the Director of Cybercrime at Interpol. Interpol is the international policing organisation. Red notices we're very well known for, but we have a number of other pieces that we do as well. With 195 member countries, we're an organisation that's made up of seconded officials like me from the National Crime Agency, United Kingdom. I've been based in Singapore now for 4 years at our Interpol Global Centre for Innovation. From there, I run our global cybercrime program. The aim of the program there is to reduce the global impact of cybercrime and protect communities for a safer world. So very much that policing mandate. And I think as we've heard here around the crime piece, you here in the audience, in what you do with the infrastructure that you look after, the companies you look after, you're at the forefront of this as well now. So when we look at high harm, high impact, high volume or high interest cyber crime, this is information that we get from you, and working with Fortinet as well allows us to design out that program that we can work with those 195 countries to prevent, detect, investigate and disrupt cybercrime. So really glad to be part of this panel. Thanks, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's continue that conversation on disruption. And I think it's a good point, especially to us and the audience here. When we talk about disruption, you often think of the police and you think of arrests and prosecution, but as we say, we can't arrest our way out of this problem all the time, right? And in fact, here, end users, our partners, obviously us as Fortinet and our Fabric and being a security member, we're all part of that disruption effort as well too. And earlier in the keynote, it was mentioned that, when Patrice was talking earlier, that cybersecurity needs to be sustainable, right? And not only cybersecurity needs to be sustainable, but it needs to have an open ecosystem, and that's how it can sustain. So John talked about our 340 partners, our Fabric partners as well. That's part of that. But it also extends to who you see here and their organizations on the panel, right? So I want to talk about that a little bit and examine sustainability with cybersecurity, what that means, and each one of you has, and your organizations has a unique approach to that. And John, I think I'll start with you. So you're a co-founder of MITRE Ingenuity and the Center for Threat-Informed Defense. And nonprofit organization, like you said, you make tools and frameworks. Many of us here, obviously in the audience, are very aware of MITRE ATT&CK, but there's much more than that, right? And those frameworks are made available to the industry for the greater benefit. So when you designed the center, how did you have sustainability in mind, and how did you scale that?
Yeah, absolutely, Derek. And when we built the Center for Threat-Informed Defense, we were thinking about things sort of at two levels. There's the organization and the environment that we created, and then there's sort of the more technical level, the actual approach that we're taking to advancing threat-informed defense. I'd say first, we recognize that we don't have all the answers. We don't know what all the problems are going to be. We wanted to create an environment that would bring together other teams that are sort of in the fight. We wanted sophisticated practitioners from across sectors, from around the world, to work together with us so that we'd always have that focus on what's the next most pressing problem to solve through the research program. It's that kind of foundational belief, I think, that sets us up to be able to sustain, what we're doing within the research program and ensure we're always kind of focused on delivering impactful resources. But it also gives us the ability to start to scale. When I say scale, I want the work that we do to have global impact. And the only way that we're really going to start to change the game on the adversary is to kind of have that global perspective of the most pressing problems and focus on those. So that's a little bit about the environment we tried to create. And then, we kind of went back and forth on what we were going to call ourselves and what our technical focus was going to be. And we said threat-informed defense. And the reason for that is also around sort of sustainability and scalability. In cybersecurity, we all have plenty of problems and challenges, right? And our view was what we ought to do is focus first on understanding adversary behaviors and then work to orient our defense around them. And so with that basic philosophy and our members in the global community, we're continually working to advance the community's understanding of adversary behaviors, what specifically threat actors are doing to achieve their goals in the most recent attacks, how those techniques are being used across the community. We want to use that knowledge to then improve our ability to defend against those threats. And it gives us this environment where we can very systematically, methodically work to improve the global capability to defend against threats.
And Fortinet and FortiGuard Labs, we're a research partner with the center, one of many. And talk about ecosystem. That's an ecosystem on its own that's been built.
Yeah, what I love is that kind of environment that we've created. It sets up where you as a major cybersecurity company can work with healthcare companies, can work with financial sector thought leaders, can work with global IT providers, and all come together and talk about what are the current most pressing problems, how do we solve them, and hopefully develop a solution that can be quickly fielded into products and solutions to make a difference. Right?
Something practical as well, and I know for all the CISOs out there, it's something that really quite resonates anytime we have that conversation of threat-informed defense. Sean, switching gears to the other center within the World Economic Forum, the Center for Cybersecurity, C4C. It was founded about 5 years ago. Fortinet is a founding partner as well. Different ecosystem, right? You've been fostering public and private partnerships through great initiatives coming out from that, like the Partnership Against Cybercrime, most recently Cybercrime Atlas as well too. And I know sustainability, keeping on theme and topic, has been a key point of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So where I think everyone in this room, we're all lucky, is that cybersecurity has this culture of collaboration. That's something that all of us make, and I hope we'll maintain that culture. Where it's been a bit more difficult is making that sustainable rather than ad hoc. There's always been a lot of good collaboration to disrupt cybercrime, but it's almost like restarting from scratch every time there's a new investigation. So what the forum was asked to do by its partners was bring together 40 or so key organizations involved in disrupting cybercrime, from law enforcement on an international and national level, cybersecurity expert organizations like Fortinet, but also IT infrastructure, banks, payments, anyone who can make life difficult for cyber criminals, and say, how do we align so that we can have long-term collaborations that are just making best use of everybody's capabilities? Now, part of that is just talking about basic principles of how do we work with each other. All these organizations have different responsibilities and face different challenges. And rather than us all complaining about what each other is doing or isn't doing, it's about acknowledging what those restrictions are and then looking at creating structures that we can move forward. And the structures is where I'm getting excited. So you mentioned the Cybercrime Atlas. This is an initiative launched formally only 2 or 3 months ago in January of this year, but actually has been building up over the last 18 months or so, where out of our partnership against cybercrime, 15 to 20 core organizations have come together to gather their data and investigate collaboratively to map out, if you think about an atlas, an actual map of about 10 plus cybercrime organizations. And the idea behind this is, okay, we're all working together so we get used to what each other organization actually knows and can do. But through that working together, we can identify dependencies and shared infrastructure that the cyber criminals themselves aren't aware they have, and use that information to more effectively decide where we can disrupt a criminal gang, and then who is best placed to disrupt them. And then the next step, what can we all do together so they don't just reconstitute a week later and start attacking some other part of the ecosystem? So as I said, I'm really very optimistic, more so than I have been in the last 5 years, that despite the challenges that still exist, we're all moving forward together in a way that's going to make things much more difficult for cyber criminals.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the mission statements and goals, particularly with Atlas, is disruption as well, too, right?
And I'd like to just say that thanks very much to Interpol for the support on this and Fortinet for your leadership. Both organizations there have been really core to making this happen.
Yeah, so it's a good segue to you, Mr. Jones, on as the head of the Cybercrime Directorate at Interpol, and given your law enforcement background, you're looking at this through a different lens as well, right? When we talk through ecosystem sustainability, of course, there's that Venn diagram, things overlap because Interpol is also part of the partnership against cybercrime, and it's an essential piece when we talk about public and private partnerships. But you have a different mission as well, right? Because when you talk about disruption, obviously you're looking at how you can do arrest, prosecution, find the bad actors out there. That's the shifting to the right-hand side of the equation. So, and I know you've built the Center for the CFC, the Cyber Fusion Center, in Singapore with Interpol, and I know you've been also responsible for 195 member countries to really scale and make this a sustainable effort. So I'd be curious to hear how you've built that and what was your vision with that.
So effectively what we're taking is that local policing model and making it global. When a police officer goes out on patrol, as I did first time in 1990, I walked out into the community and I spoke with the community. We had that ability there and then to look at what were the crime patterns, physically go and speak to people. We're not in that position now. Law enforcement is not equipped to deal effectively with cybercrime at a local level. And whilst we can do a lot in terms of that disruption piece, and as I mentioned, the prevention, detection, investigation, disruption, it is what we're focusing on. Yes, the end goal is to take the people off the streets that are committing cybercrime. And we either do that by disrupting their infrastructure or arresting them and locking them up. As we saw recently in Florida, the network ransomware affiliate got 20 years and 21.5 million. Now that's just one person. And you look at that massive ecosystem out there of cyber criminals, how do we then work into that? So coming back to sort of high harm, high impact, high volume and high interest, we have to find that hook. An incident report was done by AST around ransomware in the US. A week after was the Colonial Pipeline attack. All of a sudden, bang, government's interested. And certainly from a law enforcement perspective, wherever you are reliant on the funding you get from government, state agencies and things like that. So first of all, the sustainability piece is around the interest of the government to take care of the communities. The new national strategy just launched in the US recently. That's shifting now the way the US is looking at cybersecurity. When you're there in your business, running that business, there's a cost with that cybersecurity, and it's quite hard to quantify and qualify that at the time. And probably Sean will cover that more in detail in a minute. But from the policing side, how do we show that value add? So building out the Cyber Fusion Centre in Singapore, that's very much bringing in private partners to work effectively with us. And by bringing the private partners in through the data and telemetry that you provide or they're able to see on the networks and systems, you are talking to that community. When you bring that now into us, we're able to turn that into actionable intelligence. And the purpose of that is, I don't want to just go out and do trainings and things like that. So every time that we maybe go out and do a training, we add an operational layer to it. So we now have police in Africa where we're giving them training and then data sets where they can go into the ISPs and have that conversation with the ISPs about compromised infrastructure. And some of the officers, struggle with that. That's not what I joined the police for, but we are slowly shifting our model. So making that global to regional to local connection, looking at reduction in harm in our communities really is at the center of what we do effectively.
Yeah, and so you hit on a very key word we talk about all the time, actionable intelligence. And I think actionable intelligence, the interesting thing about that is every organization has a different use case for action. There's no cookie cutter universal solution to this. I mean, you just talked about your actions. So with Interpol, we have Project Gateway, which is the public-private partnership where we, from FortiGuard Labs, can respond in telemetry. We share notes on cases as an example, right, that can be used to fight the greater good. But gentlemen, what are your thoughts on action? What's your use case for actionable intelligence?
Yeah, actionable intelligence. I think it's critical that as a whole community, we work to evolve the way we share threat intelligence, the threat intel products that we create. If you look across the community, there's a ton of great open source threat intel resources that cyber defenders have available to them. Unfortunately, for I think most organizations and for most of those products and threat intel resources, they're simply too hard to take and turn into action. Right, and so within the Center for Threat Informed Defense, one of the things that we've been trying to do is figure out, how can we lower the barrier to entry, make it much easier to operationalize threat intel products. I think that starts with, as you saw up here on some of the slides and some of the talks earlier, this foundation that we've created with MITRE ATT&CK. That gives us, at a technical level, the ability for teams across security organizations, across security functions, to start to coordinate, collaborate on specific adversary behaviors. With ATT&CK providing that essentially a common vocabulary for teams to use, you can then start to relate resources back to those behaviors. How do I test and emulate that threat in my environment? So I'm still talking about that same threat. How do I detect or mitigate that threat in my environment, right? And it allows us to have that single focus on a behavior and look at it from different perspectives across our security teams. I think that's like a critical first step, is having that foundation in place. But then, as I said, I think it also means that, as an organization and teams that produce threat intel products and resources, that we're continually working to think about, from a consumer perspective, what does the consumer need to make this actionable, and providing them with that direct set of resources.
I have to say, look, we're getting better at going from having a hose pipe full of information and just drowning people in it, to saying, what does a particular organization need in order to start thinking about how to protect itself and how to prioritize. There is a wonderful phrase, which is also a get-out-of-jail-free card for me. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this, but we are at least moving on from here's everything that's happening in the world to here's what we know, who can do something about it, and take actions from there.
Yeah, the proverbial fire hose that we talked about. And that's one thing we've moved away from, at least from consuming, IOCs, moving to TTPs, threat-informed defense, as you talked about as well, too. So earlier, it was also talked about, we're talking about the partnerships and how we need to also adopt this in industry, right? It's one thing to have all these great ideas out there and talk about, and there's, by the way, a lot of willingness in the industry to do this, right? but how do we put the rubber to the road, and how do we actually gain adoption in industry? That's something else I wanted to discuss. And John, maybe I'll go back to you on this, because again, MITRE ATT&CK, I would say that's pretty well adopted in the industry now. How do we learn from that success?
Yeah, I think there's a few key takeaways there from the success with ATT&CK. First off, it wasn't something that was dictated from on high, right? What actually happened with ATT&CK is we were trying to solve a problem. We were trying to figure out, how do we detect adversary behaviors post-compromise? And in thinking through that problem, we realized, well, first off, we need to start to understand what adversary behaviors look like, and started to do some work looking at intel reporting to pull out these adversary behaviors. And we realized there was tremendous value in just sharing what we had learned there and providing this list of adversary behaviors. And that's really how we got started with ATT&CK. But the thing that really made it successful is it came from a set of researchers and practitioners focused on a problem, and it made sense to others. And over the span of about 7 or so years now, we've had the whole community coming together to adopt and advance the ATT&CK knowledge base. It's not created by and advanced solely by MITRE. Sure, we're the curators. I think of us as the curators, though. The whole community contributes to the knowledge base, and it's that sort of reflection of community knowledge that's captured there, right? And so that's a critical foundation. Then I think to really make it approachable for all security teams, it's great that we have that foundation, but we got to go several steps further. Not every security team is really going to be focused on understanding intel and integrating intel into their operations, right? We need to save those security teams from kind of reinventing wheels. And one of the things that we've tried to do within the center's research program is understand, well, as you get started with ATT&CK, what are the most pressing questions you have? What can we do to make that easier? We launched the Sightings Ecosystem project a couple years ago as a way to look across the community, understand what are the most prevalent techniques across the community. And we do that by pulling in community contributions of event records correlated to ATT&CK, analyzing that, anonymizing that, and providing reporting. And so what we just did there was we created a foundation that's based on data to help defenders understand, well, what's the most prevalent thing happening today? We can then kind of layer on top of that the ability for us to provide kind of tailored focusing. We created a project called the Top Attack Techniques Calculator. It takes that data-driven insight from the Sightings ecosystem. What are the most pressing attack techniques? What are the most widely used attack techniques across the industry today? And combines it with an analysis that we did of the corpus to understand, codependencies and relationships among techniques. And this other factor, which is critical, which is actionability. As a defender, what can I do about this particular technique? You put all of those things together, and by creating a calculator, we made it so that every security team out there can leverage the expertise of the research team and our partners that worked on this capability, and simply focus on, all right, for my organization, I care about these sorts of resources, and it'll spit out for you your set of top techniques to focus on. And so when I think about making intel accessible and actionable to everybody, we have to take away some of that foundational work that we as experts can kind of do together as a community, and make it much easier to focus on the right next behavior.
Lower the barrier, as you said. And
Exactly.
tooling, I think, is a very important piece
Yeah.
of that. So you mentioned MITRE ATT&CK. You have the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator. That's one tool, and there's been a lot of Caldera is another one through attack simulation as an example. I think that really helps to lower the bar.
I think, turning that the other way around. So you look at the prevention piece there is, how do we then use that in law enforcement? So the way that we built our model now is doing operations and disruptions in countries. Recently, and Fortinet were part of this in Nigeria, we had a lot of data sets coming into us. Organized crime groups were identified. We worked very closely with Nigerian police and other countries as well to provide the victim data sets. We then provided that into Nigeria, and they carried out a huge number of arrests, disruptions, because Nigeria recognized, and they were open and said, we've got cyber criminals in our community. We want to go after them in our community and prosecute them in our community. When we look at that wider now, we're looking at the sort of ransomware attacks, so we're looking at the network intrusions, the data thefts, phishing, DDoS, things like that. Ransomware still has that sort of politicized element to it. So we have a counter-ransomware initiative that's being set up now as well, where we have like-minded countries that have come along and said, this is a thorny problem. How are we going to deal with this? So if you take that Nigeria example, it's about going after the criminals or infrastructure in the countries where they're based. And whether they're Russian-speaking cyber criminals, Interpol were able to reach into those countries. So there's some policy decisions that need to be made now at governmental level about, how are law enforcement going to do this? Because we hear the old adage, cybercrime knows no borders, but actually police do. We are bounded by borders, national legislation. And just now at the United Nations, there's a new convention being negotiated. It's the first crime convention in over 20 years. And there's a very catchy title about elaborating an international convention to counter the use of information and communications technology for criminal purposes. Say that in one go. But this is where the diplomats now are coming, and there's going to be a consensus-based convention, which will help give us that sort of statute, effectively, that all countries will work to in the future. So as Sean said, I'm optimistic about where we're going at the moment, but communities have still been harmed. We still have individuals, businesses, hospitals, banks being targeted on a daily basis because the criminal model is based on financial gain. So how do we harmonise that disruption? Things like Atlas, with MITRE as well, we are harmonising things, but again, unfortunately, we haven't stopped physical crime, which is why our program talks about reducing. We've got to be honest in these discussions as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'm really glad that you brought that point up about the borders, because that phrase is also used and abused, I think, a lot of the times, right? Almost as an excuse, right? But we have to be realistic and honest with that too. I want to switch gears and talk briefly about the skills gap as well too. This is something that was also mentioned about our goal to train 1 million NSE professionals by 2026. And that's our part as a security vendor through our NSE program, and obviously looking at security professionals. But you also have a similar job with 195 member countries with law enforcement as well. I know you have cyber surge campaigns too, right?
Yeah, so we sort of look at that capabilities of law enforcement and the capacity, but we're now doing this in a little bit of a different way. We're looking to see where are those threats emanating from, where are those vulnerabilities in countries, and then tailoring our training with, as I said, that operational layer on it. So just recently we've been in the Seychelles training police officers there because of bulletproof hosting. When you look at the legislation in that country, we didn't realise they had legislation that allow them to go in and speak to these, hosters effectively, and then using those data sets from our private partners, we're able to inform and give them those data sets. But this is very much a long journey for law enforcement. Also, we see some of our law enforcement colleagues being poached at times and off to private sector. But there's a sort of debate on that. Well, that's not really a good thing. But for me, that's creating other communities. So this is, creating those communities, protect communities. But we have to be quite sort of, focused in the training that we provide to law enforcement, because it's got to have an impact at the end of it as well.
Sean?
Just on poaching, so look, all of our organizations are picking from each other's pockets, and we have to. The rooms like this need to be 3 times bigger at least for us to have the capacity we need. Exactly. And look, we need a lot more organizations with the ambition of that Fortinet pledge to train 1 people, but also you're acting on that pledge, you're on target. To give an understanding of actually the scale of this, but the impact of it. So for our cybersecurity outlook report, we dug into these numbers of we need 3 million more cyber experts. And the sectors that needed it most were energy and utilities, financial services, and the public sector. So that's the people who keep the lights on, the people who ensure that our salaries get paid and we can go outside and buy a coffee, and the people who keep our hospitals and schools running. So this, people think of cybersecurity and they think of it as a purely technical job. Now, it's an organizational role as well, but this is a job that keeps society running. All of you are doing extremely important work that matters to everybody you meet, whatever kind of role they're playing. We need to really get that message out, that it's open to a very wide group of people. I think most of us here will come from very different backgrounds. But it's getting that message right. So one, I think, really good example of it working and not. A couple of years ago, the UK government released an advertisement with a ballerina taking off her ballet shoes called Fatima, and said Fatima's next job could be in cybersecurity. This bombed. bombed because they had released that advertisement, and more or less the same day as they called for cuts in funding to arts, culture, and theatre. So it was seen as this very evil plan. But that story of Fatima, of the ballerina, that's not far from real life. Some of the most senior people in the Israeli Defense Forces 8200 units are women who started out in dancing. And that's how did the message get across that I, as a dancer, can move into cyber, and not only can I move, I can be brilliant at it. It was by people like us on the panel and people like all of you in the room going around to schools, going around to universities, going to non-traditional areas where we'd find cybersecurity expertise and saying, this can be a role for you. You can make the world a better place. You will be entertained. You will always have something to keep your brain active. Think about it and come on in. So we need to really start building on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think John, I'll give you 60 seconds before we close.
Yeah, I'll be
closing thoughts
I just
on the
would say
skills
that,
gap.
you know, from the perspective of that skills gap, I think that, you know, we look at it as a research organization. What can we do to kind of package up the community knowledge and make the whole problem a lot easier to solve? And so we've put together training and freely available resources through the MITRE ATT&CK Defender program. Right. But ultimately, things like the top attack technique calculator, they're aimed at making it so you don't have to know everything. Not everybody needs to know everything. We can start to package these resources up and make it much easier for all defenders. Right?
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, this has been a fascinating discussion. I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we have to be honest with ourselves, we don't. But thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, please give our panelists a warm round of applause. Thank you. Okay.
Please welcome back John Madison.
Alrighty, finishing up quickly here. So I'm going to date myself here, because when I arrived in the US in the late 90s, Weezer was a big band. Okay, my favorite song is the Pork and Beans, if you would listen to that one. But even if you haven't heard of Weezer before, they play quite a lot of cover songs as well. So please join us on Wednesday night for a great concert with Weezer. And with that, I'm going to thank you for attending and officially open Accelerate 2023. Thank you.
Where I come from isn't all that great. My automobile is a piece of crap. My fashion sense is a little whack, and my friends are just as screwy as me. I didn't go to boarding schools. Preppy girls